It was 2:47 a.m. when the 911 call came through. The woman on the other end of the line was frantic, whispering, her voice trembling like she was trying not to be heard. "Please, he's still in the house. I'm in the closet. I think he killed my boyfriend." The dispatcher immediately traced the call to a small rental house in rural Kentucky, miles away from the nearest major town. The patrol unit was dispatched within seconds. But what caught the operator's attention wasn't just the fear in the woman's voice. It was something else, something in the background, a faint dragging sound, like something heavy being moved across the floor. The woman, later identified as Hannah Myers, had rented the house for a weekend getaway with her boyfriend, Greg Fallon, a quiet IT consultant with no criminal history. According to neighbors, the couple arrived late Friday night, unloaded groceries, and stayed inside most of the weekend. No arguments, no strange visitors, no warning signs. Hannah told dispatch she'd been asleep when she heard a loud thump, followed by what she thought was Greg gasping. She said she froze, then heard someone else walking down the hallway. The door creaked open. She ran, barefoot, and locked herself in the walk-in closet. "I don't know who it is. I didn't see his face, but I heard him talking to someone. I think there's more than one person." By the time deputies arrived at the scene, the front door was slightly ajar. No lights were on. The house was silent. Inside, they found Greg Fallon's body in the hallway. He'd been stabbed multiple times, but there were no signs of a struggle, no forced entry, and no Hannah, not in the closet, not anywhere. What the 911 tape didn't reveal right away, and what only surfaced later in the investigation, was that Hannah never gave a last name during the call. Her phone number wasn't registered to anyone named Hannah Myers. In fact, there was no record of a Hannah Myers living in Kentucky at all. But what made things even stranger was what officers found in the closet. There were footprints, small, bare footprints leading into it, but none leading out. As investigators began combing through Greg Fallon's life for enemies, secrets, or any kind of clue, a call came in from a gas station just 12 miles away. The clerk said a woman walked in barefoot, wrapped in a flannel shirt, asking to use the phone. She looked disoriented, frightened, but when he offered to call the police for her, she ran. When they reviewed the surveillance footage, their jaws dropped. The woman wasn't Hannah Myers. She was someone else entirely, and she had been reported dead 3 years ago. The gas station footage sparked panic within the local sheriff's department. The woman they believed to be Hannah Myers wasn't just using a fake name. She matched the description of Alina Graves, a woman presumed dead after disappearing in 2022 from a small town in Missouri, over 400 miles away. Alina's case had gone cold. Her fiancé at the time, a man named Christopher Vance, had been a person of interest but was never charged. Her body was never found, but blood evidence found in her apartment was enough to assume she had died, until now. But the question that no one could answer was, why had she resurfaced now? And why was Greg Fallon dead? Greg's background turned up almost nothing: clean record, stable job, low profile. He was an introvert with few friends and no enemies that anyone could name. But once investigators dug deeper into his digital life, a more complicated picture emerged. Greg had been renting vacation properties under different names across multiple states, always accompanied by women who couldn't be tracked after their visits. Women with no social presence, no IDs, no paper trails. 2 weeks before his death, he'd booked the same house under a different alias, Peter Lenz. The woman listed on the lease that week was Nicole Yates, age 33. No records of her either. Detectives now believed Greg may have been involved in something much darker, possibly human trafficking or worse. But before they could confirm anything, something chilling happened. The closet where the 911 call had originated was sent to forensics. Under a loose floorboard, they found a small, hidden compartment. Inside were 4 disposable phones, each wrapped in cloth. Every phone had dozens of missed calls and encrypted messages, all leading back to a single number, one registered to Christopher Vance. Remember him? The fiancé of Alina Graves, the man who claimed she was murdered. But now they knew she wasn't murdered. She was alive, and she was running from something far worse than anyone realized. The next step was clear: Christopher Vance needed to be found and questioned. Detectives from Kentucky coordinated with Missouri authorities to locate him. But when they arrived at his last known address, an isolated farmhouse just outside Branson, they found the property abandoned. Inside, it was cold, lifeless. Dust coated the furniture. The fridge was empty, and every room looked like it hadn't been lived in for months, except for one, the basement. There, in the far corner behind an old water heater, they found a locked storage freezer. It wasn't plugged in. Taped to the top of it was a sticky note with a single word: "Don't." They pried it open anyway. Inside were folders, hundreds of them. Names, dates, photos. Most of the women listed were flagged as missing across various states, all between the ages of 25 and 40. Each file had a number in the top right corner and a printed signature: Lenz Holdings. That was the name Greg Fallon had used in one of his vacation rental aliases. Peter Lenz. The pattern was becoming clear. Someone, possibly Greg, possibly Christopher, had been part of a larger network. A coordinated operation involving women who disappeared without a trace. But what chilled investigators most was the folder marked AG001. Alina Graves. Her file was different. Thick. Inside were multiple photographs of her taken in different locations, including one where she appeared to be drugged and strapped to a hospital bed. But none of the photos were dated. Some looked recent. Alongside her file was a small flash drive. It contained audio recordings, conversations between two men. One was Greg. The other matched Christopher Vance's voice. "She knows too much," one of the voices said. "Then we bury it. Like the rest," the other replied. But one recording was more disturbing than the rest. A third voice entered the conversation. It was Alina. She wasn't begging. She was laughing. 3 hours later, officers received a call from a hospital in Nashville. A woman had been admitted, no ID, severely dehydrated, exhibiting signs of trauma, but otherwise stable. The attending nurse said she kept repeating a name in her sleep. Greg. Greg. I'm sorry. She fit Alina's description exactly. When detectives rushed to the hospital, they confirmed it was her. Alina Graves. Alive. Breathing. But silent. She refused to speak. Wouldn't answer questions. Wouldn't explain what happened. But the moment they showed her a photo of Christopher Vance, her ex-fiancé, her hands started shaking. She whispered only one thing: "He's not the one in charge." Alina Graves sat in silence for nearly 36 hours under protective watch. She refused food, stared blankly at the walls, and flinched at the sound of footsteps in the hallway. Nurses noted that she barely slept, and when she did, she jolted awake gasping for air, like someone who had trained herself not to dream. Then, sometime after midnight on the second night, she finally asked for a detective. The room was cleared, the recorder was turned on, and she started talking. Not about Christopher Vance, not about Greg Fallon, not even about herself, but about the orchard. According to Alina, the orchard wasn't a place, it was a system. A rotation of rental homes, fake identities, offshore accounts, and trafficked women. Women with no ties, no family, no one to report them missing. They were moved state to state, property to property, all under the control of a faceless ring that used aliases like Peter Lenz and Nicole Yates to stay invisible. Alina said she was recruited, not kidnapped. She met Greg Fallon on a dating app under the name Paul. He told her he ran a modeling network for women seeking travel gigs. She didn't suspect anything until her third trip, when the door locked behind her and her phone stopped working. She wasn't allowed to leave, not until she agreed to work for them. And when she did, she didn't just survive. She started gathering information. What no one had known until now was that Alina had been building a case of her own, from the inside. Using the same disposable phones hidden in the floorboards, she'd recorded conversations, stolen documents, and memorized safe house locations. But she'd never planned on Greg dying. That, she said, wasn't part of the deal. She'd killed him, and she wasn't sorry. "He was going to take me to a new house," she said. Out of state. I knew once I left that house, I was gone. Forever. So I waited until he fell asleep. I stabbed him with the kitchen shears. He didn't even scream. Detectives were stunned. But the most shocking part came when she slid a hand-drawn map across the table. It had 5XS marked across 3 states, each one labeled with a single letter, D, L, V, O, and R. When they asked what the letters meant, Alina replied, "They're initials. Each house belongs to a different handler. They all answer to one man, the one who built the orchard." Detectives leaned in. "What's his name?" "I don't know his real name," she whispered, "but he signs everything the same way." She pulled a folded paper from her waistband. It was stained, torn, and barely legible. 3 words were scribbled in red ink. "The Crow Knows." The paper Alina handed over, marked, "The Crow Knows," wasn't the first time investigators had come across that phrase. It appeared once before, in the background of a 2021 missing persons case out of Arkansas. A young woman named Danielle Rios vanished during a weekend trip with a man she'd met online. Security footage from a roadside motel showed her entering the room, but never leaving. The man was never identified, but on the inside of the motel door, crime scene photos showed something odd. A phrase etched lightly into the wood with a pocket knife. "The Crow Knows." At the time, it seemed meaningless, but now it was the center of everything. Federal agents joined the investigation within 24 hours of Alina's confession. Her map, though crudely drawn, was accurate. The first location marked D, a secluded house in Tennessee, was raided quietly. Inside, they found what looked like a hobby farm. Cows, chickens, clean pastures. But the barn told a different story. It had no animals, just soundproofed walls, industrial-grade locks, and 8 mattresses lined up on the floor. No sheets, no names, just numbers 1 through 8, painted above each sleeping space. They found hair samples, fingerprints, blood residue, but no people. Whoever had been running the house was gone. The next house marked L was in Georgia, this time in a gated suburb. A retired dentist named Roger Flint lived there. He looked harmless, widowed, lived alone, kept to himself. But when his property was searched, agents found a hidden compartment beneath his garage filled with driver's licenses, burner phones, passports, and a locked black box. Inside the box were photographs of women. Some bound, some sedated, all dated. None of them had ever been reported missing. The initials matched names in the files recovered from Greg Fallon's rental. But what chilled agents most wasn't what was in the box. It was what wasn't. No mention of the Crow. No financial records. No real names. It was as if each handler, D, L, V, O, and R, was working independently, managing women like property, with only whispers connecting them back to whoever the Crow really was. Then a break came. At the 3rd Orchard house, marked V, agents recovered a video camera that had been left behind in a rush. It had only one video file saved to its SD card. It began with a woman, blindfolded and sobbing. Behind the camera, a voice asked calmly, "Do you know why you're here?" She didn't respond. "Because someone has to pay for the things they bury. You weren't chosen. You were inherited." Then silence. And then a sound. The call of a crow. Loud, distinct, almost deliberate. The video cut to black. For the first time, investigators realized that this wasn't about money or trafficking alone. This was ritual, psychological, possibly generational. The phrase "you were inherited" became the new focus of the case. Alina, still under protective watch, had nothing more to offer, at least not directly. But she did say something before her next breakdown. "The Crow doesn't take women. He takes secrets." The phrase haunted every agent on the task force. The Crow doesn't take women. He takes secrets. It didn't make sense until they traced the last location from Alina's hand-drawn map. A remote, privately owned estate deep in the North Carolina mountains, marked with the letter R. County records listed the land as abandoned, but older documents linked the property to a family called the Rudmore line, a name that hadn't appeared in any of the prior files. No one alive had filed taxes on the estate since 1993. But aerial surveillance showed signs of recent activity. Smoke from the chimney, a truck in the woods, disturbed soil near the base of the property's fence line. A raid was authorized. Agents arrived before dawn. From the outside, the Rudmore estate looked almost peaceful. Fenced in by a rusting iron gate, it sat atop a hill wrapped in trees, cloaked in early morning fog. A man opened the door before they even knocked. Older, mid-60s, white beard, wearing work gloves and a calm, unreadable expression. He identified himself as Elias Rudmore. He didn't ask why they were there, didn't demand a warrant. He simply said, "I figured it would come to this," and let them inside. The house was massive but plain. No ornate furniture, no signs of luxury. Just a home built for utility. As agents searched, Elias followed, speaking only when spoken to. He answered every question, politely, vaguely, as if none of it mattered anymore. But then they reached the study. There, in a locked drawer behind a false panel, they found an old trunk. Inside were dozens of VHS tapes, each labeled by year, some going as far back as 1985. One of the newer tapes was labeled G. Penance, Orchard Tape number 117. They played it. The same woman from the camera found at the V location was in the frame. This time, she was seated at a table. There was no violence, no screaming. She was speaking calmly, recounting details of someone else's life. Her voice cracked when she spoke about her brother. The tape ended with her whispering a single phrase. "Forgive me, Father. I told him the truth." Agents confiscated all the tapes, but the most disturbing part of the discovery wasn't on film. It was in the floor beneath the study. There was a hatch, and below it, a tunnel. The smell hit them first, earth, mold, something metallic. The tunnel led to a stone chamber, circular, lined with wooden chairs. On each chair sat a mannequin dressed in faded clothing, all facing a wall covered in names. Hundreds of names, handwritten in what looked like charcoal. Some names had been crossed out, most hadn't, and in the very center of the floor, painted in deep red, was a single phrase: "What is buried does not forget." When Elias Rudmore was confronted about it, he only said, "We never hurt them. We made them remember. That was our task. That was our burden." He refused to elaborate. He never asked for a lawyer. But when agents began questioning him about the crow, his demeanor finally changed. His eyes dropped. He smiled faintly and whispered, "He was my brother." Elias Rudmore didn't resist arrest. He was calm as he was escorted from the estate, hands cuffed behind his back, the sun barely rising over the mountains. But what troubled investigators wasn't his demeanor. It was his last statement before they placed him in the transport van. "You'll never find my brother. Not unless he wants to be found." The name Jonathan Rudmore, the supposed identity of the crow, hadn't appeared in any recent records. But according to archived census data from the late 70s, Elias and Jonathan had grown up on that very estate under the care of a man named Reverend Malcolm Rudmore, their father, a former pastor who was excommunicated for his involvement in fringe psychological experiments tied to behavior correction and moral rehabilitation. The estate, according to buried court documents, once served as a restorative sanctuary for individuals deemed morally compromised. Translation: a private prison for those the Rudmore family believed needed to confess or be corrected. The orchard, it seemed, didn't begin as a trafficking ring. It began as a belief system. Jonathan Rudmore, the younger brother, never officially charged, never photographed after age 18, was said to have rejected his father's teachings. But internal letters found in Elias's study told a different story. One handwritten letter, dated 1998, read, "You ask how I live with what we've done. But I never carried guilt, Elias. I carry memory. They confess to me now, not because they want forgiveness, but because they want it to end. We are the end. I am the final voice before silence." And the crow, he remembers. The tapes, the list of names, the ritualistic setup in the tunnel beneath the estate. It wasn't just psychological abuse, it was systematic extraction of secrets. Some women had been physically harmed, others psychologically broken. Some were lured into relationships, Others were abducted, but all were forced to confess to something. And the truly horrifying part? Federal analysts reviewing the footage noticed a recurring detail. The confessions were not always related to the women themselves. Many confessed to witnessing crimes, some to covering up the misdeeds of others. A few described details from high-profile unsolved murders, including one that matched the exact circumstances of a case in Oregon that had remained unsolved since 1999. It was now believed that Jonathan Rudmore, the Crow, had built a network not just to imprison women, but to harvest secrets from them. And those secrets, he sold. The Crow wasn't a killer. He was a broker of truth. Alina Graves, now moved into federal witness protection, was shown some of the letters recovered from Elias's home. One of them had her name in the margin AG001. She stared at it for a long time before saying, "He never wanted us to scream. He wanted us to remember. That's why he locked us in. Because when you're alone long enough, you tell the truth, even if it kills you." Investigators believe Jonathan is still alive, possibly still running his sanctuary, possibly still collecting. But to this day, not a single verified image of him after age 20 has been found. No known fingerprints, no confirmed sightings, just rumors. And every few months, somewhere in the country, a woman disappears. No ransom, no demands, just one message left behind, either scratched into a wall, a mirror, or even scrawled on a napkin. The Crow knows. The case had gone quiet for nearly 3 months. Elias Rudmore remained in federal custody, facing charges ranging from unlawful imprisonment to obstruction of justice. But without hard evidence linking him directly to the disappearances, most of the serious charges were built on circumstantial connections and the disturbing tapes found on the estate. The true predator, the man known only as the Crow, was still out there. No known address, no financial trail, no digital footprint, until April 19th. At 8:43 p.m., a live stream went active on a small true crime forum tucked away on the dark web. The channel was anonymous. No username, no past uploads, no way to trace the origin server in real time. The title of the stream was one word: confession. Thousands of users joined within minutes. The screen showed a woman, mid-30s, brown hair visibly shaking, sitting in a wooden chair in a dimly lit room. Her name, Marla Dennett, was stitched onto her work uniform. She looked directly into the camera, took a deep breath, and said, "My name is Marla. I'm an ER nurse from Charlotte. 5 years ago, I altered a death certificate to protect someone I thought I loved." She began to cry. "I lied to police. I changed the records. I buried the truth. And now," he said, "I have to confess, or it happens again." The screen flickered. Behind her, a faint movement. A figure just beyond the camera's edge, dressed in black, barely visible, but unmistakable, feathers tied to the wrist. Before Marla could say another word, the screen cut to static. The forum went offline seconds later, but a few viewers had already screen recorded the stream. One of them sent it to the FBI. Another leaked it to local news in Charlotte. Within an hour, Marla Dennett was identified and confirmed missing for 3 days. She hadn't shown up to work. Her car was found abandoned in the parking lot of a hiking trail just outside Asheville. And inside the glove box, a single crow feather, tied with black thread, and beneath it, a message scratched into the plastic. "She buried the truth. We only returned it." The note was signed, R. Investigators scrambled. They searched the hiking trail, sent divers into nearby rivers, deployed dogs, helicopters, drones, but found nothing. The only clue came from a forest ranger who reported seeing an unusual man leaving the trailhead the night before Marla vanished. Said he was tall, thin, wearing a black canvas coat, even though it was 82 degrees outside. The man didn't speak, didn't look up, but the ranger said he noticed something odd as the man walked away. He was dragging something behind him. It was wrapped in a tarp. Thought maybe it was camping gear. But then I saw feathers, just kind of fluttering behind his wrist. No trace of the man or Marla has been found since. But what made the case even more chilling was what authorities uncovered after rewatching the stream. At exactly 13 minutes and 13 seconds into the video, a reflection in a shard of broken glass revealed part of the figure's face. Not enough for full ID, but enough to confirm something unsettling. The man was not Jonathan Rudmore, which meant the crow wasn't working alone. The identity of the man in the stream, the one wearing black, with the feather tied to his wrist, wasn't Jonathan Rudmore. That revelation turned the case on its head. If the crow was no longer one person, or maybe never had been, then what exactly was law enforcement dealing with? The answer came from the last place anyone expected: a private collector in upstate New York. He was a historian, reclusive, former university professor. He'd been following the Rudmore estate story from the beginning, particularly the details about the tapes, the rituals, and the use of confession as punishment. When he saw the phrase, "the crow knows," in a leaked headline, it hit him. He'd seen it before, nearly 30 years ago, while cataloging personal effects from an abandoned asylum scheduled for demolition in western Pennsylvania. Inside a locked storage chest buried in the hospital archives, he found a faded leather-bound journal marked with the insignia of a crow's head encircled by thorns. He never turned it in, and now, for the first time, he handed it over. The journal belonged to Reverend Malcolm Rudmore, Elias and Jonathan's father, the man who allegedly started the so-called rehabilitation program on the Rudmore estate. But the journal revealed something even deeper. He hadn't started anything. He'd inherited it. The journal dated back to 1910, passed down from his grandfather, a preacher named Silas Rudmore, who claimed to be one of the original voices in an underground order known as the Confessor's Circle, a group devoted not to justice or religion, but to extracting truth through fear and isolation. According to Silas, they believed secrets were the root of corruption, and confession was the only path to purification. But public confession wasn't enough. It had to be forced, private, extracted under psychological collapse. Only then, he wrote, could the soul be freed from rot. The journal contained instructions, blueprints, even ritual guidelines for how to structure a confession. A phase 1, silence. A phase 2, memory. Phase 3, revelation. Phase 4, purge. Some entries describe techniques involving deprivation, sensory manipulation, isolation chambers, and the use of mirrors to induce breakdowns. In one note, Silas wrote, "The crow sees what the confessor denies. The crow remembers when the sinner forgets. We do not judge. We extract. We return what is buried." Investigators were stunned. The rituals they thought were the invention of a disturbed family now seemed rooted in something far older, a secret tradition handed down for generations. And the most unsettling part? Several of the surnames listed in the journal, Rudmore, Langford, Bellamy, Doss, match names found on recent property records tied to orchard safehouses raided in the last 2 months. It wasn't just Jonathan Rudmore. It wasn't just a cult. It was a network, still active, still recruiting, still extracting secrets, one confession at a time. And somewhere out there, Marla Dennett was still missing. Until July 6th, a farmhand outside Fayetteville, North Carolina called police after discovering a strange box nailed to the underside of a footbridge. Inside it was a camcorder, wrapped in plastic and twine, and a note that read, "She has nothing left to confess." Authorities are reviewing the footage now, and what they find inside may finally expose the crow's new face. The camcorder recovered from beneath the footbridge was old. No internal memory, just a scratched-up mini DV tape inside, labeled in black ink, "Return." It took federal techs nearly a day to recover the footage. What they found was unlike anything they'd seen before in this case. No masked figure, no torture, no ritual setup. Instead, the video opened on a simple wooden room. The camera was static, propped on a tripod. In the center sat Marla Dennett, still in her nurse uniform, hands on her lap, eyes red but calm. She wasn't bound. She wasn't screaming. She spoke directly to the lens. "I lied to all of you. About what I did. About who I was." She inhaled slowly, and then said something that chilled the room full of federal agents watching the feed. "I came to the orchard on my own. I asked to confess. She looked down for a moment, then added, "He didn't take me. I sent the feather." The tape cut briefly. When it resumed, Marla was sitting in a different posture. Still calm. They don't hurt people who tell the truth. Not really. They show you who you've always been, even when the world lets you lie. She leaned closer to the camera now. "This is my return. And if you're watching this, you've already been chosen. You just don't know what you're hiding yet." She paused. And then the final sentence. "The crow doesn't come for the guilty. He comes for the liars pretending to be innocent." The video ended with 5 seconds of static. Then the screen turned black, and a single word appeared in white. Alina. Federal agents were shaken. They scrambled to locate Alina Graves, the original survivor whose 911 call had sparked the entire investigation. She had been under protection. New identity, new location. But when they arrived at her safe house, she was gone. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, just a single item left behind on her kitchen table. A crow feather, tied with red thread this time, and beneath it, a mirror, smashed at the center. Around the shattered glass, a message written in lipstick. "I lied. I never escaped. I just changed rooms." To this day, the Orchard case remains technically open. Several individuals from the suspected network have disappeared. Some arrested, some killed in what appeared to be orchestrated suicides. But Jonathan Rudmore was never found. Neither was Alina Graves. And the Crow, if he was ever a single person at all, has become more legend than man. But once a year, on the anniversary of Marla Dennett's stream, a new video appears on the dark web. No faces, no sound, just a list of names. And each year, at least one of those names vanishes without a trace. This year, one of the names matched a junior agent assigned to the Orchard Task Force. Her colleagues said she'd been acting strangely, talking to herself, avoiding mirrors, sleeping with the lights on. And the night before she disappeared, she told a friend something she shouldn't have remembered. Something only Alina had said on the original 911 call. "I can hear feathers dragging across the floor." The end. Or is it? For more chilling crime story, please like, share, comment, and subscribe.